Okay, I am going to try to get this all out in one take, but I'm finding it harder as I do this talking into a camera that it's not like writing at all, and I tend to get flustered and lose my train of thought. So I'm going to try to stay on task as much as possible here. Forgive me for the stammering and the uhs and everything else. But I was talking to my mother this weekend, and I've talked to other people about this, but basically, it's like nobody seems to know what truth is anymore. Truth is a problem for the society because it seems as though everybody has their own opinion on what they think truth is. Okay? I'm not going to explicitly tell you what is true or what isn't true. My blog oftentimes is littered with sarcasm, as are my Facebook posts, because I kind of filter the world and life through a specific set of rules and a grid basically. And what I've found is that it helps keep me grounded. All right, some of the things that I do are based in the axioms of philosophy. There actually are three of them: the law of non-contradiction, the law of identification, and the law of the excluded middle. Okay, these laws help me zero in on what truth is. Okay, and they also help filter out all the nonsense that I see. So when I make truth statements, which I do often on Facebook and on my blog, uh, I'm often told that's my opinion, and then they will often give their opinions, and then I realize that there's a discontinuity. Why? Because if you're going to make an absolute truth statement, you need to have an absolute truth source. I personally believe as a Christian that God is my absolute truth source, and that truth source that's been communicated to me is the Bible. Although the Bible doesn't speak explicitly to things in this world today, like cloning and some of the other more advanced scientific stuff, it does directly and sometimes indirectly speak to issues of justice, racism, and whatnot. So, back to the original axioms of philosophy, one of the filters that I put through is the law of non-contradiction. The law of non-contradiction says basically that something cannot be true and not true at the same time. Okay? A wheel cannot be round and square. It can only be round or it can be square. And basic observation, if we move towards observation, says that the wheel's obviously round. But then we get into issues of what's called a fallacy called equivocation, in that we can start to change definition of words subtly or dramatically so that they don't even mean the same thing. When somebody says tolerance, and I talked about this in the last video, my idea of tolerance is not the same as other people's idea of tolerance. I believe that I have a fuller scope and understanding of the word tolerance when I say that I accept all people's ideas and I'm inclusive with it. Whereas other people will oftentimes have a very narrow definition of it and will only include what they believe is accurate. And that's not always the full truth. So that the equivocation enters into the law of non-contradiction because we could start to define and redefine terms, so that area starts to become muddled. So then we have to move to the second law, which is the law of identification. When communicating whether something's contradicting or not, we have to understand that in the law of ID, when I'm discussing something with you, it has to be, we have to agree on the terms. And again, I said tolerance, hate. I mean, there's a lot of other buzzwords that the left and the right like to use, but the truth of the matter is that oftentimes when I start a conversation with somebody, if I can't define the terms and we can't agree what the terms are, I won't even follow through with the debate or the argument, because quite frankly, it becomes a moot point. It becomes arguing a fool to a fool's thinking. And I just think that's it's kind of a shame. But if we can't even meet in the middle with the terms, then we can't debate what's right and wrong, because we're not even going to agree what the words mean. And then of course, in trying to determine what's right or wrong, we get set into a situation where it's the law of the excluded middle. Basically, this is what the Bible used to say: is your yes is your yes, and your no is your no. You can't be yes and no at the same time. You have to pick a side. You can't sit on the fence when it comes to truth. So I'm going to talk more about truth in later videos, but I need to get a basic formation of the ground rules for what I'm thinking in these videos as we move forward. And that more or less is what I'm trying to do with this particular video. The thing is that everybody in the world views things the way that they want to view them. They view them through their own window. My theology teachers used to call it the hermeneutical grid. The grid is basically this box, this window that we see through, that we view the world. And unfortunately, when we start getting cluttered with all this information coming in, like my mother was mentioning, and like other people have said to me, spots in that screen and that window start to become blurred and distorted. And to be able to filter through that grid and we got to clean the window. And when we clean the window and we start to delineate exactly what we're starting to see, and we say that, does it pass this rule, does it pass through this rule, and is that window clear, then we start to get a clearer picture, and it's not obscured and messed up with all this other superfluous information that we didn't need.